Once again, I'm back to talk about research that we've just published. It's a review of some evidence in the recent past. The title is, I read, is Effect of Lifestyle Choices on Cerebrospinal Fluid Pulsations. CSF or cerebrospinal fluid is an important fluid in which our brain floats. And that fluid's generation, circulation and release from that space is extremely important in long-term memory and lowering the risk for Alzheimer disease. So let's begin. First, I will explain to you certain terms that I'll keep using. CSF is cerebrospinal fluid. The fluid originates in the core of the brain and through ventricles percolates and comes out, and it remains in the cavity in which the brain floats, brain and the spinal column. So therefore, production and circulation becomes important. Now, when you talk about production, remember that about 150 ml of fluid exists in the cavity and it is circulated 4 times. So that is the level of generation and circulation happening in the central nervous system. This is first point. Second, I'll refer to something we call entrainment, or when two apparent distinct systems start to oscillate in the same frequency. It is seen in nature all the time. For example, circadian rhythm talks of several systems of the body that oscillate together. So the day and night cycle is linked to key hormones such as melatonin and cortisol. You can also see the entrainment in two musical drums you play, like tabla, you hit here and the other one will start oscillation. So entrainment is seen everywhere, and that plays an important role in the CSF circulation. Why? Because still recently we didn't understand how the flow and the circulation happens. But the recent discoveries, especially using fluid mechanic ideas, has allowed us to use certain proxy mechanisms to identify the flow or the movement of the CSF. Okay, so these are the two important terms. While I am on the terms, I will add a few additional keywords that we'll use. Autonomic nervous system is a nervous system that governs our automatic processes such as heartbeat, digestion, hormones, and so on. Its healthy balance is absolutely critical for long-term health. So when you look at all these systems, the important point here is to understand that there are several components that influence CSF circulation. First, the cardiac pulsation or the heart pulse. And this, as you can guess, is about 60 to 85 or so heartbeats in a minute. Okay, so its frequency is somewhere between 0.8 to 1.2 hertz for people who want to know frequency. These pulsations have the ability, because of the velocity it generates, to influence the flow. However, it does not move the fluid as strongly as the other component, which is respiratory component. So what is respiratory component? During the respiration, we generate inhale and exhale, which is total breathing length of typically 3 to 4 or 5 seconds. When we do slow respiration, these waves have an influence on the cardiac pulsation. It lowers the heart rate, relaxes the body, balances the autonomic nervous system. So slow respiratory pulsations do not have strong velocity. However, compared to the cardiac component, its ability to move the fluid is significantly higher. Estimates says 2 to 4 times stronger influence on the CSF. Also, something is not right with increasing the cardiac pulsation to move the CSF. Why? Because stronger heart pulse, like tachycardia, faster and stronger pulse, could damage certain tissues long term, and therefore it is not an ideal means to increasing the CSF flow. And moreover, certain chronic conditions result in higher heart rate and therefore imbalance in autonomic nervous system, which is linked to poor CSF flow. So cardiac component is not effective, not as effective. Respiratory component helps us lower the negative impact of cardiac component and has an influence on the CSF flow. So these are the two components. In addition, physical activity plays a role. Healthy autonomic balance also is important for long-term better circulation. And finally, the question is how all of this combines to create optimum mechanism. The researchers have discovered that during night, our body naturally generates slow respiratory components. Slow means 8 to 10 seconds, 12 seconds long breath. This breathing create certain unique neural circuitry or neural oscillations which can be measured through EEG. And when that happens, there is entrainment of that resulting in increased blood flow. And the increased blood flow is obviously linked to the respiratory processes, which generates a respiratory wave at 0.1 hertz, which is about 10 seconds long breath or even longer. When all of this entrainment happens, the body is in deep rest. And guess what? This happens during non-rapid eye movement stage. Let's understand. Quality and quantity sleep aligned with day and night cycle, which means we sleep at night, has very good likelihood of us reaching the two of the alternative stages of sleep continuously that happens during sleep: rapid eye movement and non-rapid eye movement. Now, the maximum generation of CSF happens at 2 a.m., which is when we are likely to be in an REM sleep, which is linked to slow respiratory waves. This combination is when it is likely that the CSF flow is maximized, because it has slow wave respiration, lower cardiac pulse because heart rate is low, body is relaxed, non-rapid eye movement stage, which induces further slow respirations, coupled with likelihood of higher production at 2 a.m. All of this together, and the body is at deep rest, maximizes the CSF flow. So therefore, it's important to maintain quality and quantity of sleep at night, not during the daytime. Together, if I recap, the research now also have added that slow breathing, even during the daytime, could influence the CSF. Animal models have also identified that physical activity is linked to better CSF flow. And there is another pathway. Physical activity balances autonomic nervous system, helps you sleep better, and therefore it is also linked to better CSF flow. Avoiding chronic conditions, which includes clogged arteries or obesity or chronic disease such as diabetes, all of them are linked to imbalance in autonomic nervous system, which has an impact on slowing down or negatively impacting the CSF flow. So now we talk about several lifestyle choices. Finally, people who do chanting have very strong brain physiology, which is not observed in Sanskrit Pandits who don't do chanting. And therefore, it is likely that when you combine slow breathing with humming or chanting, it could have long-term positive influence on CSF flow. And all of this is linked to better quality. Now, why did we talk all of these lifestyle choices? Because poor CSF flow clogs certain proteins like beta amyloid in that cavity, and that is linked to long-term higher risk of Alzheimer's disease. And therefore, several lifestyle choices play an important role. You will see on your screen a visual just to drive home that point I made about the respiration versus cardiac component. Okay, so you will see on that cardiac frequency is about 0.8 to 1.2 hertz, which leaves about 60 to 85 cardiac beats in a minute. Its velocity is high, but its ability to displace CSF is low. However, the respiratory component is below 0.3, it can go to 0.1 or even lower, 0.08. And that, while it has lower velocity, it has a stronger influence on CSF flow. So together, several lifestyle choices can be combined. And before I end, I want to highlight that lower stress, better sleep, good quality diet, physical activity, all of them, avoiding tobacco and substances, are linked to better autonomic balance. So autonomic balance has to be healthy. Good quantity and quality sleep aligned with night is important. Slow respiration practices when you do during the day may increase the probability of you achieving better sleep, and therefore slow respirations during NREM stage is also important. Physical activity and managing stress. And one of the techniques we use, which is demonstrated to be a stress buster, is Brahmari. So combine all of this and it's likely that you will have better health.